Thank you. Hi, beautiful people. It's good to see everyone. Like she said, I'm a developer advocate. And today I'll be talking about DevRel. So a lot of us probably know DevRel as the people that generate numbers. And most organizations position DevRel as how many numbers are they going to get for us if we hire them? So they'll go to your Twitter and check how many followers you have, or your LinkedIn and see how engaged you are. And it's a boasting right for DevRel. Honestly, I'm going to say, I get excited when I make a post and it has like 1,000 views, or I post an article and it has 1 million engagement. Like, that's amazing. But the problem is that organization leadership doesn't actually give a about it. Like, no one really cares. No matter how many numbers he gets at the end of the day, it doesn't count except it's converting to revenue in one way or another. And so during this section, we're going to discuss how we can actually tailor DevRel efforts, whether it is community management, technical writing, community engineering, whichever one it is you're doing in DevRel, how we can tailor that to actually measure like the impact of what you're doing and how it's also like benefiting the product at the end of the day. And there was a really long intro earlier, so I don't know if I should go over it, but like I'm Anita, and I'm a developer advocate. And amidst being a developer advocate, I am an open source and DEI evangelist. So I do talk about open source projects and do a lot of work in open source space. And part of that is being a cloud native and platform engineering ambassador. So I do talk about platform toolings and cloud toolings a lot. And I'm also a board member at Chaos, where we do develop like community health metrics and standards for open source projects. So if you want to connect on LinkedIn, those are my socials. You can always hit up after now. So when we talk about DevRel, so many persons have the wrong perception or the wrong idea on what it is or what it's supposed to achieve. And like I said, a lot of organizations, depending on which one you're in, would position DevRel as under the marketing. Some people position it under the engineering team. Some people have DevRel in product teams. And like, it goes on and on. Some people put DevRel under community and just leave it there. But whichever one it is that you find yourself in, I like to define DevRel as a growth bridge between the product and the developers. So I like to see it as a middleman. It sits at the trajectory between the community, we have the marketing. If your project is trying to get the audience of maybe an open source community or the AI community or the cloud community, then you can focus on like the community aspect. If you're looking for the product aspects or trying to get more features for your projects that you're just launching, then you can position DevRel under product. Under engineering, if you're trying to, educate people about your developer tool that you just introduced, then DevRel falls under engineering. And the same as marketing. If you want to grow visibility within this particular space, companies put them under marketing. So a lot of times DevRel is pushed back and forth, forward and backwards, up and down. And ideally, people often categorize it under like the community business, just building communities, building numbers. And whereas it goes beyond that, every single effort that a developer relations person, and when I say DevRel, just know that it encompasses community management, technical writing, developer advocacy, developer evangelism, and the likes of it, right? And so all of these kind of fall under the umbrella of DevRel. So when I say DevRel, I'm talking to any one of these actually. The end goal of every single thing that the developer relations team do is in order to drive adoption of that particular project, make sure there is retention of the users. And at the end of the day, there is money that is being funded from like gotten back after all of these efforts are being made. However, because the title DevRel wears a lot of hats, it keeps the individuals occupying this on hot coal. What do I mean? Now you have two people that you have to meet the needs of, and they're not easy to meet the needs of. The community and the developer community, who are the people that you're trying to reach out to, educate, inform about whatever it is your company is doing. And developers often love developer advocates or community managers because they make life easy for them. They improve their experience through documentation, articles, and all of that. So oftentimes, developers are excited to talk to these people. But then there is another angle of persons, which are the executives. They also have to meet the needs of these people because when the company is hiring, they have demands. You're coming to make us money or profit in one way or another. But because these individuals often don't understand the scope of what is involved, they also don't know what the expected outcome or the results to show success should be. And so some communities start to give you like a 3-month timeline and like they're expecting you to magically whip up something and, get their products from 0 to 100. And so there's a lot of pressure to meet the needs of these both groups. And for most people, this can either be a winning or a failing moment. And whatever it is you choose at this point is very critical. A few years back, one of the actions that I did when I was at this crossroad was to choose the numbers. And a lot of developer relations in entry level often fall for this trap. And I was like, I need to maybe if I make more noise and do something that is indismissible, then every single person in the company would notice that I am doing the thing. And so what can I do? I went on to start writing articles, and I wrote a lot of articles. Not one, not two, not three, a lot of articles. And I thought that would be enough. Went on to post these articles across all of my social media platforms, communities that I was involved in, tagged people, and it got a lot of engagement too. And I thought it would end there, but I didn't see the appreciation that I was expecting or I was hoping for. So I went on to submit CFPs to conferences like this at random. And so whether it was involved with what my company wanted or what it didn't want, I just submitted. And I had great talks, so they all got accepted. But the problem was all of these things that I was doing did not really still solve the problem that I was supposed to fix, which is try to make my position in the company as something that cannot be negotiated or pushed aside if the need arises. And so I had high views from my blog posts and a large number of following and people engaging on that content that I did about my company. But that was not enough. And I spoke at conferences like this where you see thousands of people in. And at the end of the day, people are asking, what's this project? What does it do? But I wasn't able to convert all of these numbers. And this is a problem that a lot of people who are getting into DevRel tend to struggle with. Because you think it's all about speaking because the CFPs or the job descriptions emphasize you're going to be the face of our company. And if maybe you entered DevRel 5 years or 10 years back, it would be a good thing to do that because way back then, that is what DevRel was. But today, it's a lot more deep than that. And this is basically an example of what me trying to measure metrics 3 to 4 years back looked like. And I thought maybe if I'm able to show them that we had a good range of follower increase and a lot of people attending my talk and a lot of people, reacting to my articles, I would be able to show that I was doing the work. However, the issue is that these metrics are not bad. They're really great if it is something that your company is hoping to benefit from on the long run. These metrics are good, but they're surface level. They only answer the question or the solve the problem of visibility. If your company is trying to gain visibility in a particular audience or is trying to reach out to a specific target of developers, then these metrics are not bad. However, visibility alone is not going to cut it, especially when organizations invest hundreds and thousands of money in developer relations. And what happens when you keep doing or bringing in these vanity metrics is you start to see that communities or projects categorize you as an individual in DevRel under the community vibes people. And so they're going to be hiring a lot of people, but they put you under the community vibes. And the reason is because they're spending a lot of money, paying for you to travel to conferences. They're paying a lot of money, setting up your workstation so that you can do a lot of videos. And they're giving all of this, but they can't comprehend the importance or the significance of the work that you're doing. And no one is saying, as an entry-level developer relations person, you're not doing the work, because you could. In my case, I was speaking at lots of conferences and submitting lots of CFPs. But it still didn't change the fact that I was still put under the cost center instead of like growth driver narrative. And so when you think about it, if you're an individual, you have a company, and you probably invested $500,000 per year for the budget of developer relations, and you get something like this. You get a lot of followers on your social media. You get a lot of developers asking questions about your product. But at the end of the day, when you check the ratio of people that decided to buy into your product at the end of the quarter, you probably see one new user or one new subscriber. After all of the effort that the developer relations team did, if you were in that particular place as an employee, what would be your first reaction? I know I won't be happy. And I think it's the same expression that most companies tend to have when it comes to developer relations today. They're like, we're putting in a lot of money, but we can't see the returns, and we can't seem to place you in the right place, da 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 da. And so when situations like the economic disasters come up, and there's need to cut down on a lot of things, who are the first set of people that will be let go of? You guess right, the developer relations team. Because now I put in a lot of money into the budget, and at the end of the day, I'm getting one new subscriber after one whole quarter. And you're obviously showing me that you can do the work, but I can't see the numbers. And so this is the issue that a lot of companies have with developer relations team, especially those who haven't figured out how to measure this. And so if you want to move from this vanity zone to actually being able to quantify the impact of your team, what should you do? All right, so we're going to look at a quick framework on how you can, drive impact, but measurable impact. So first action would be to actually understand the DevRel impact funnel. So every single thing that you do as a developer advocate, community manager, technical writer, developer evangelist, whatever hat it is you're wearing, anything you're doing in that role either falls between any of these categories. You're creating awareness. You're doing a lot of talks. You're doing a lot of content to create awareness for a particular project. Or you're doing a lot of tutorials, onboarding, and developing SDKs and all of that in order to drive adoption. You can either be doing a lot of hackathons, hosting workshops, building sample projects in order to lead activation, because you want people to move from using your project to actually playing around with your project and doing a lot of other things. Or you can decide to focus on community programs and building a support community behind your project. That way, you want to retain the users that have come through either the awareness or any of these platforms. Or you can move a lot further. You don't want to just retain these people. You want them to start speaking on behalf of your project. And basically, that's what a lot of companies are doing today, launching ambassador programs, championship programs, and all of those. That is also another way that you can use to drive advocacy for your company. And so under the DevRel impact funnel, any of these things, like understanding what it is you're doing and how it falls into any of these categories, makes it a lot easier for you to measure or understand where you're trying to measure this impact from. And so having a clear map of what it is you're expecting at the end of the day makes it more attainable to measure the impact of what you're doing. And you can eventually move from understanding this funnel to being able to map your DevRel efforts to like the business objective and key results. And in order to do that, you first of all have to ask yourself, what does my team want? So many organizations today hire DevRel because it's a really cool thing. I'm setting up a team of 10 people, and a friend of mine also did that, and then he employed a DevRel, and everything changed for them. That's the story most companies hear. And so once you hear that, AWS launched a cloud advocacy program, and so many persons started using AWS as their cloud platform, people are like, that's a really inspiring story. I need one of those people on my team. But what do I want them to do? I don't know. What are they supposed to do? I don't know. But it says they solved the problem. They helped other people make money. So I'm guessing they're going to do the same for me too. And so they go on and put job description where you see, we need somebody who loves the developers, knows how to educate them, who can build a community, who can build this, who has the voice, who can stand as a face of the project. But when you get into the team, I bet you they expect you to do a lot more than that. And so if you don't understand what it is that the team is expecting, on the long run, you might not also be able to measure some of this impact. So if you, first thing to do is to map out what it is that you're doing in accordance to what the business objectives are. If it's a startup and probably wants to grow their growth and acquisition, instead of focusing on blog views like I did, you can actually try to check how many new users sign up from the time that you dropped that article to probably 2 to 3 months down. And if you, instead of focusing on a number of attendees like this, which is an actual thing. So many persons come to conferences like this. I know so many persons who are here on behalf of their companies, and they're probably going to be counting how many people attended their talks. And they'll go back to say, there were 100 people in the seats. I impacted 100 people. Did you? Because most people walk out of this door and forget that I even spoke, they even forget my name. And so what makes you think that if they leave this event, DevFest, they're going to remember the project that you mentioned in the course of your 1 hour presentation? And so instead of mentioning how many persons sat for your talk or how many persons walked up to you to ask about your project, try to check out the developer quality leads. How many developers were interested enough to ask you, where can I sign up? What is the best way to use this? My project is having this issue, and I think your project can solve that. Those have more viability of showing up later than counting the number of persons that are present in your talk at the end of the day. Instead of trying to check the marketing quality leads, try to find out the pipeline and the touch points of developers. And so from the part where you submitted maybe an article on Medium or on Hashnode, and somebody decided to reach out to you from that point, you can say, oh, I posted this and I got this. Someone reached out to me and they moved this past this and I onboarded them. That has more impact than saying I posted my article on 5 different publications and we got 100 views. A good example is a developer attends your workshop. He tries your API during the process of the demo. Probably didn't get the best experience, but they still showed up anyways. And they decide to give it a try when they get home. And they do the trial. After the trial, they decide to show up again and become a paying customer. You can use this type of mapping to say, get maybe the sign up from the demo after the whole process. Sometimes when we come for demos like this, the links that we're sharing to you can be tracked back. And so how many persons were able to use that link that you shared to your audience to say this number of persons that signed up can be traced back to the talk you gave at DevFest 2 years ago? Or you can use the CRM tagging for event lists so that whenever someone tags your company from the event, you also know that this number of persons came to us because you were mentioned in this particular conference after your talk. You can also use referral links or YouTube links as another way to keep track. Another thing that you can also try to map out is if the project OKR is like product adoption. Let's say you launch the project, it has a good, every developer experience and all of that is in place. It has a moderate community, but then you realize that the target audience, which are maybe senior or senior level engineers, are not really using and buying into the product. Instead of trying to check the number of persons that visit your documentation, which a lot of times I know that was a mistake I used to fall for, where I'll check how many, what the traffic is to our project documentation because I updated it and I entered the team and I put together documentation. So for some reason, I had this mindset that if we have maybe 100 persons going through our documentation, then we have 100 users. But that's not the case. Because at the end of the day, you can have 100 persons showing up on your website, trying to read through the documentation, and just one person will make it back to the Slack channel to ask any questions. And so instead of trying to, check the amount of views that your documentation had because you updated it, try to check the time it takes for them to move from finding out your project, either from Twitter or normal search engines, to eventually using that particular project in real time, either creating a pull request if maybe you're contributing or doing other things. Instead of the SDK downloads, another thing that I fell for was counting the number of image downloads over the amount of weekly users that were actually showing up. Instead of the marketing and all of that, try to focus on the developer activation and the signups. And you can do this, for instance, like I said, from the moment when the user signs or finds out about your project, try to study their movement. Most companies have this all figured out, but if you're a first-time developer, advocate, community manager, or DevRel person, and you're in this particular place, you probably have to figure out how to do this onboarding funnel. But if you're in a community where this is already mapped out, good for you. So you can try to find out how many persons signed up on that particular day that you give that talk. 2 months down the line, how many remained? And if maybe your project is the type that has an app on that people can download, from the moment where they downloaded the app, how many minutes did it take them to finally get to the end of the app and complete whatever it is they wanted to do on that particular platform? Let's say it's a payments platform. From the moment I downloaded the app, for instance, how long did it take me before I made my first transaction? How long did it take me before I finally concluded and then gave it a rating? The point where it takes the user longer time to, stay there and try to figure things out is the point where you have to figure out a way to improve their experiences. But then understanding this, the onboarding funnel is one of the ways that you can also track more measurable metrics over time. Another thing that you can also map out is the DevRel efforts towards the business objective is retention. When these people come through the door, how many of them stay? I'll give a simple instance. When the first when the other speaker was done, how many people remained in the room? Basically, that's what we're trying to do with retention. And so when you come to conferences like this, or you post articles and it's getting millions of views and millions of engagement, after that period where there's a high traffic and your team is hyping you and saying, oh, that's great performance, it did awesome, how many persons stayed after a period of 1 month? After a period of 3 months, how many remained? After a period of 6 months, how many remained? And after a period of 1 year, how many were able to actually convert to active community members or active users and all of that? So instead of looking at the documentation page views, you can also try to check the reduction in the support tickets. How many persons reported an issue when using your project? If it shows that there's a reduction in that, it shows that more people are getting a better hang on how to use your project or your onboarding resources are a lot better. You see, now you get more answers to the questions of what exactly are you doing on our team? Instead of measuring the number of replies that you're having in the Slack channel, actually check how many times community members helped each other solve a problem. It also gives your team an idea that, oh, the team or the project is getting more community members down. Know it enough to educate other people about it. And instead of counting the total number of people in your Slack community, check how many people actually come back or how many new members join the community over time. And by the time you're done going through all of this, the next thing is probably trying to shift how you tell the story of your developer relations strategies from what's or how we DevRels communicate amongst ourselves to how you can communicate with stakeholders and also the leadership on your team. And so what we would normally say is the community or the particular article or the speaking engagement had a lot of community engagement. However, leadership wants to hear how does that relate to customer success. And so there's a lot of persons that are coming in, engaging into your articles, but then how does that help translate to customer success? So when we're busy saying there's lots of like content performance, we had a spike of 100% or 200% in traffic, the leadership actually wants to hear how does that help us cut the cost when it comes to like customer acquisition. And so it takes a lot of times for companies to, onboard people, which means they have to figure out the right videos, the right articles, where to post it, where to also do post their marketing stuff so that there's a lot more SEO and traffic to be measured and all of that. It takes a lot of money. And so if your content is able to perform in a way that cuts down on the amount of money that is being spent on customer acquisition, the team is not going to figure out why exactly do we have this person on the team again? Because lots of times DevRel persons get that question within their teams. And so when you're talking about, we have a lot of developer advocacy, right? The leadership actually wants to hear how can that be measured in terms of like organic growth engines. And so we have people that obviously are talking about our project, but how does that go forward to like help us not invest so much into creating more of these or collaborating with influencers to spread the word and all of that? How much does that save us at the end of the day? And when you say you have a lot of community support, what they actually want to hear is support cost optimization at the end of the day. So learning how to communicate what it is you're saying, but then with the relevant facts that actually support what you're saying, is a better way to show that not only are you doing the work, but then there's a lot of impact that can be traced back to every single step or every single action that you do on your team as a developer relations person or as a developer relations expert. And if you want to also move beyond measuring these vanity metrics, I would always say that there is no laid out or a perfect plan on how to measure DevRel impact. And that's why a lot of companies, after going on to hire a new DevRel employee, they feel lost a few months into having you on the team because they themselves do not know what it is they're measuring for. The most visible and simple way to measure impact in DevRel is by community impact and the numbers, which is why so many persons boil down to just looking at the numbers. But on the long run, those numbers don't also scale, especially when the team is growing and there's need to show the fact of what you're doing. And so the best thing and the first thing I always recommend is find the objectives and the key results that the company is looking to earn or like to benefit on the long run. You enter a company, if they want to do, maybe they're focusing on a particular niche or group of persons. For instance, your company just introduced an AI tool, and the target audience are the AI developers. So if you know that that is what they're focusing on, you have to do every effort around that particular need. And so now you have to educate developers about it. So there's going to be a lot of content, documentation, and articles. But then you also have to do a lot more awareness because this is a new product that has not been existing. And if maybe they want to break into open source and there's and they don't have any person that has a standing ground on that, you know that you have to do a lot of community work from this point onwards. And so start with the company's top level goals, business goals. What is it they're actually looking for? In a previous company that I was at, one of their major goal was trying to build developer community and audience. And so being an open source project, the first thing that I did was try to put together the processes to make the open source experience of that tool as easy as an open source tool would be. And by that, it made it easy for the people that want to come into using that tool from the open source perspective to see how simple the experience can be and adopt that particular project. And so being able to identify what the business OKR makes it a lot easier to do the rest. And the next thing is to connect the maps. If they're looking for A, then maybe B might be the solution to that A that they're looking for. And if you know how to do that, or if it is within your strength, then you probably have to figure out how to do that. Is it documentation? Is it events? Is it articles? Or is it mostly partnerships and collaborations? You have to think or ask this amongst yourselves, how or what exactly it is that they're looking for and how your strengths and your skills align with that. And measure the change. We already looked at earlier, instead of focusing on the number of views or the number of engagements that you have for your project, try to bring it down to the level where you can take one milestone after another. So move from number of views to active users. Move from the number of people that eventually reported documentation to number of persons that were able to not actually report the documentation. It's a lot more positive than showing up and saying, we had 100 comments on our document today. Our document is bad. But if you actually game with metrics like we had less engagements or less comments on our documentation, which shows that the changes we made last week did turn things around for us for the good. That's a better way to report it. So try to figure out how to measure that. And then when you're telling your story, report in the impact language in a way that the leadership can relate to. They don't care, like I said, about how many thousand or how many million views you're getting to your content, how many clicks you're getting, how many persons are showing up to your talk. At the end of the day, if these numbers do not actually relate to how much returns they're getting on the long run, it still doesn't actually show how impactful the developer relations role in that particular team is. And so for the takeaways, I would like to emphasize that when you're getting into a role as either community manager, technical writer, developer advocate, engineer, evangelist, whatever it is hat you're wearing, you should first of all identify DevRel as a growth driver and not a community vibe or initiative. And so a lot of work that you're doing, while the job description might say, we just need you here to help us with our community and talk to developers, what they're trying to tell you is, we need you to talk to developers so that they'll give us money. And so if you're unable to figure out how to make the developers and the people at the top bring money from hearing about that project, you have something to ask yourself. And then vanity metrics is not equals to business impact. So try to look at how you measure your impact. Look for ways to align your DevRel with business objective. Always, always, always measure for adoption, retention, and the revenue impact at the end of the day. That is about all that I have to say. But the first rule to measuring DevRel return on investment, I would say, is always tying DevRel goals to the company's objective. There's no way to actually or accurately say, I have a map on how to measure DevRel impact. But if you're able to tie this up to the other, It makes it a lot easier and attainable to see the numbers that your work as a developer relations person is bringing to the company over time. I hope that answers most of your questions on measuring DevRel impact. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them now. Any questions? Damn, I did a good job at this. Looks like everybody got it. That's nice. I'm going to tell my team about this.
Sorry, I have a question. Yeah.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, would the role DevRel apply to like some certain industries and like organizations? Because from what you have been speaking about, I kind of like gathered it's developer focused. So what if my company is building a product that is for like customers? I mean, we do have developers on board, but then if it is the priority is the customers, is there also a space for developer relations in the midst of that?
Yes. So ideally, developer relations started because they were trying to solve the needs of developer-facing products. So the likes of AWS, and they wanted to meet developers. However, the concept has expanded beyond that. And so many organizations today, even those who don't create developer-facing tools, still employ developer advocates, developer engineers, and all of that. And the strategies and all of that still apply the same way in each industry.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for the presentation. So I'm not a dever, so I'm just learning about dever. So in your own opinion, will you say every company needs a dever? And in scenarios where a company just hire a dever without knowing the reason why, how do you help them figure that out?
So, very interesting question. I don't think every organization automatically needs a DevRel. As an organization, if you don't figure out why exactly you think this vacuum needs to be filled, then you shouldn't. And if you are somebody who has been hired in a position like this, or you're currently going through an interview process, I think during the interview process, the first thing to ask as a DevRel trying to get into companies, why is this opening available? And so the person should be able to tell you what their objective is. What exactly are you trying to achieve? Is it increasing awareness? Is it adoption you're trying to drive? Is it onboarding you're trying to solve? What problem is it that the team has that you think this position best fits? And that is when you ask yourself if what you have, like the skills they have and the experiences, match up to what the company is trying to achieve with that particular job opening. And so to your question, not every team needs a DevRel. So if you're a team of 5 who just putting together, you don't need a DevRel. I'm not saying you can go beyond that, but like it's not every project that needs a developer relations, and it's not at every instance that you need to get one. From the point where you start to have problems of retention, awareness, onboarding, community, once you start to see these problems as a big blocker to your project moving forward, then you know that you probably need somebody that can bring all of this. And so if you don't have those problems at all, there's necessarily no need for that position. Because you're just going to have somebody who is going to moving from one department to the other. And I've been there before where I moved from all of the departments and eventually they said, sorry, we did not have a good place to fit you into the team. So we have to terminate the contract. And so instead of putting somebody in that position as an organization, just try to figure out if you have any of these problems that you think the developer relations person would fit into and help you address. All right, that is all for today. Thank you all for listening.